بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Welcome to this episode of Missing Ingredients here on Huda TV. I'm your host Abdur-Raheem McCarthy. We've been talking in our last few shows about some of the missing ingredients that we're missing in our prayers, in our search to find the sweetness and the pleasure in the prayers that we're missing. And we mentioned and we reached in the last episode about the ingredients which come actually way before the prayer and the effect it has on us once we enter in the prayer itself is the issue of the hope and having hope and filling our hearts with the hope from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He will accept from us, that He will forgive us, that He will have mercy upon us. And we reached the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the reality of hope and the dangers of having false hope. When we stopped on the end, we'll continue with it today. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَاجَرُوا وَجَاهَدُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. I want you to pay attention to this verse. Very strong in the meaning of what is the reality of hope, of raja. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, verily those who have believed. And with their belief, what did they do? هَاجَرُوا وَجَاهَدُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. That they migrated and that they fought in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now pay attention before we continue in the verse to the reality of these things mentioned here. Those who have believed and those who have migrated, meaning leaving their homelands, and those who have fought in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, two of the most difficult actions for a person to do. Everybody loves where they're from. Everybody loves their homeland. And we see this in the reality of the Prophet ﷺ when he made hijrah, when he turned around and he looked at Mecca, and he said, verily you're the most beloved places to me. And if your people were not forcing me out, I wouldn't have left. The love of his home country, that's normal. Now even for us in America, the Irish Americans, all of them love Ireland, even though most of them have never seen Ireland in their life, but that's our homeland, we love it. That's how people are, it's the nature of people. So Allah mentions this as an example for the reality of having hope and putting the hope into Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to the raja from Allah, that these are the people who have migrated and those who have fought in the path of Allah. The second one, fighting in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where you know you might not return, you might be killed in the struggle. These two things were mentioned in the ayah. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what did He say? أُولَٰئِكَ يَرْجُونَ رَحْمَةَ اللَّهِ. These are the ones who have striven, have done all these difficult duties, these difficult deeds. They're the ones who have, who really request the hope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who really have raja with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah said, Wallahu Ghafur Rahim. These are the ones who will get have the hope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the ones who will receive the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not the ones who have the false hope, who say, I hope Allah will forgive me, and he doesn't pray. Or he doesn't pray properly, doesn't pray on time, doesn't do what he's doing. He's doing haram night and day. And he says, I hope Allah will forgive me. Now, it doesn't work like that in Islam. You have to hope by acting. And this is what we gain from this verse in Surah Al-Baqarah. Now we're going to come to the next ingredient. All these ingredients, we're getting it ready so we can, before we dive into the prayer. The next ingredient is the khawf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the fear of Allah. We just talked about the raja, the hope. Now we're going to mix it with fear as well. The khawf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having fear from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's vast in His mercy, and we're supposed to fill our hearts with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at the same time, we need to have the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah makes this clear throughout the Quran. He talks about His rahmah, His mercy, about He's all forgiving. From His names there's a Ghafur. From His names are Rahman, Ar-Rahim, the all merciful. And we forget the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also severe in punishment. Oh, we know it, but we don't want to think about it. But check out these verses when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says, نَبِّئْ عِبَادِي أَنِّي أَنَا الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. Pay attention to this verse. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, tell my servants that verily I am the Abdur-Raheem, the all-forgiving, the all-merciful. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala immediately say in the verse that comes next? The verse that comes right after this verse, وَأَنَّ عَذَابِي هُوَ الْعَذَابُ الْأَلِيمُ. That verily my torment, my torture, it's the severe. It's very severe. So this is the reality of the believer, that he worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through hope and through fear. And the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it in itself is different levels. The fear when a Muslim does things that he does, people don't understand why. Now everybody is out drinking, partying. A Muslim student says, no, I don't do that. A Muslim says, I don't do that. People are dating, fornicating. Why don't you do that? Is a Muslim different from another human being? He doesn't want to fornicate. He doesn't want to be with women. It's natural for a man to want to be with women, but la, we don't do that. No, because we fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have hope. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept them from us. We left this for you, Ya Allah. Yusuf alayhi salam, when he's with the very beautiful woman, the woman of power, the wife of the ruler of the country, when he could have done it, what stopped him? The fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Verily, I fear Allah. I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why he didn't do it. The fear of Allah, it comes into action. The Muslim, he needs to fill his heart with these things. And when you have these ingredients before your prayer, you're going to find the difference. When you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through fear and through hope. And the scholar of Islam, when they talked about the beauty of the worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala between fear and hope, they gave a beautiful example. They say worshiping Allah through fear and hope, they said the fear and hope, it is like the two wings of the bird. The two wings of the bird. You have one of them which is hope and one of them is fear. What happens if only one of them, you only have one of them? You're going to fall just like the bird. You're not going to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala properly unless you worship Him through fear and through hope. Now, we mentioned that the fear itself is different levels. You have the basic fear, which is the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not to do what you're not supposed to do, and to do what you're supposed to do. So a type of fear, because you don't want to get punished for not doing it. But there's a higher level of fear, which is called in Arabic al-khashya. What does it mean, al-khashya? It came in the verse of in the Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the khashya, and who really fears Him. The khashya is worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fear along with knowledge. Al-khashya, it's fear and knowledge put together. Fear through knowledge. Fear through knowledge. If you look in the verse in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this when He says, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. That verily, the ones who fear Allah from His servants, from His creation, are the ulama, the scholars. Because through their knowledge, they know the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They know the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When they're about to disobey, they say no, because they know the reality of what will happen if they disobey their Creator. They know the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's a type of fear which is greater than the regular fear, the khashya, because it's through knowledge. And the third type of fear, which we're going to talk about, the third category, is even higher status than that. And that's what they call the haiba of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it's with khashya, where you have knowledge, but it increases you as well because it has a form of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The greatness of Allah. You do only things because you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching. You know He sees you. You're scared of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's even higher level. And this is what we want from the Muslims, is to have this type of haiba, this type of khashya, this fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all of their actions. And we don't realize, and that's why I'm focusing so much on these things, we don't realize the things that we do in our everyday life, the things that we do in our actions, it's having a big effect on our prayers. We're like, what is missing? Where are these missing ingredients? Where did they go? Why can't I find the pleasure in my prayer? Why can't I benefit from my prayer? Why am I entering into the prayer and leaving it without benefiting anything? It's all because that we're missing these ingredients. Worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the khawf and through the fear. What can increase our fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How can we get to another level when it comes to the fear? All the basic Muslims, alhamdulillah, if you're a Muslim and you have iman, there's some fear there. It might not be the high level that we need, but there's some fear. So many Muslims, even if he's not really that religious, a lot of the things he does or doesn't do, it's through hope and through fear. So alhamdulillah, as Muslims we have this. But we want to increase our fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are some of the things that we can do? First of all, it is our knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you know the greatness of Allah, you know the reality of the greatness of Allah, you know before you act, you think. You know. Now, for example, if you're going to commit a sin, you're going to do it, you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can see you. If you're going to say something evil or something bad, you stop yourself, you refrain, because you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He can hear what you're saying. And this all comes, my dear brothers in Islam, from knowing the reality of Allah through the issue of Tawheed, the issue of Islamic monotheism. So many people don't focus on this today. Say, we're Muslims, why focus on the issue of Tawheed? When you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through His names and through His attributes, and you strive to worship Him through these names and attributes, you're going to see that your iman is going to increase. You're going to know the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your fear of Allah will increase. Knowing Allah. And also knowing our need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase you in our fear. We know how weak we are and how much in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we are. Ya ayyuhan nas, O people, antumul fuqara ila Allah. Verily you are the ones who are in need of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us throughout the Quran that we are the fuqara, we're the ones in need, and He's the ghani. He's the all-rich. We need Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were to take away from us the air we breathe just for a second or two, we would die immediately. We're in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This greatness in our heart, we know the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it helps us inshallah in fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now we mentioned about 6 of the different ingredients that we need. I want to go on to the 7th ingredient. Now, ingredient number 7, I was about to mix it into what we need in order to find the pleasure in our prayer, inshallah tabarak wa ta'ala. It is something that will make our prayer so much more easier, make our prayer so much more beneficial. And that is the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Loving Allah. I want you to focus on the last 2 ingredients, because when you mix these 3 together, it's going to affect all aspects of your life. Not just your prayer. It's going to have a big effect on your prayer as well, but it's going to affect all of the aspects of your life. When you have the hope and the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all your actions are affected by your hope and your fear, and through your love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You love Allah. You do what you do for Allah. Everything in your life is for Allah, because of your love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When it comes into your actions, it's in your heart, it fills your heart with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then it becomes part of your DNA, part of your every movement that you do. You're going to find so much pleasure in your prayer. You're going to find so much pleasure in leaving that which is haram. You're going to find so much pleasure in doing that which you have to do as a Muslim, that which is mandatory, that which is compulsory. When you do it through the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You do it because you have hope from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He will accept you. You do it because you have fear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not accept. You're going to see the effect it's going to have upon you and upon your prayer. And this issue of love, one of the greatest things that affect all the humans around the earth. Sometimes people do crazy things because of love. We're going to look deeper into the issue of loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But after this short break, so stay tuned. We'll be right back, inshallah ta'ala.
It's the essence of Islam, Tawheed, believing in the oneness of Allah, the same message that Allah sent all His prophets with since the beginning of time.
La ilaha illallah. You need Tawheed, especially at the time of distress, at the time of need.
Tawheed first with Imam Kareem Abu Zayd in Ramadan only on Huda TV.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to this episode of Missing Ingredients, where we're looking into what's missing in our prayers. And we started talking about one of the greatest things, one of the greatest ingredients that's missing in our prayers and in our lives, and that's the true love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, I want you to focus with me on this issue of love, because love, like I said, it does strange things to people. People do things sometimes, like why would somebody do it? Because of the love they have for people of this dunya. But the reality of the believer is that everything he does is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The real believer, any move he makes, it's for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, as a Muslim, you have to do everything you're supposed to do. It's not up to you. Now, we have to realize as Muslims, it's not an option, obeying Allah or disobeying. I can do what I want to do. I'll take half and leave half, or do a quarter, leave 3/4. It doesn't work like that. ما كان لمؤمن ولا مؤمنة إذا قضى الله رسوله أمرا أن يكون لهم الخيرة من أمرهم ومن يعص الله ورسوله فقد ضل ضلالا مبينا. Pay attention to this verse. This verse is something that has an effect on the Muslim in his actions in all aspects in life. It's not up to a believing male or female. If Allah has decreed something in this affair, in this religion, that it's up to him. He's going to obey him or not, it's not up to you. And whoever disobeys Allah, he is verily going to stray, a clear astrayness. Be aware of this. So it's not up to us. If Allah has decreed something, He says do it, we have to do it. If He says leave it, we have to leave it. Even if it's something we want to do. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the creator. He's the one who created. He knows what's good for us and what's harmful for us. And this, subhanAllah, let's take a minute to reflect on this. Because all throughout the world we live in today, people think, Islam, it's something, it ties you down. You can't do what you want to do. You can't do this, can't do that. SubhanAllah. Who knows best? Them or the one who created you? When you want to fix something now, you want to fix this iPad, do you take it to a mechanic? Like, you take it to the person who's specialized, not just specialized with Apple, because he knows what he's doing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created you. He knows what's good for you. He says, do this, don't do this. He knows subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's when we're supposed to do something, we have to do it. But what I want to add is the issue of love here, and how the love has an effect. Because when you do something because you're not supposed to do it, you do something because you're supposed to do it, and you leave something because you're not supposed to do it, and you add with that the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're going to find a big difference in your actions. You do this because I love Allah. And then when you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything you do, your DNA, who you are in life, it becomes part of who you are. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He describes the believers, He describes them the ones who live for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those who love Allah more than anything else. But the disbelievers, you'll find that their hearts attached to the things of the dunya. Whether it's things that they worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or things that they follow which could become a form of worship. They love it more than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَتَّخِذْ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. That from the people are one who they take things that they worship other than Allah and make them equal to Allah. But those who believe, they have more love for Allah than these people have for their things. The things that they worship, the things that they follow from their desires, the real believer has more love than that for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to fill our hearts with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In our actions, through the hope, through the fear, and you're going to find the big difference, inshallah, when it comes to your iman, through your actions. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned something, and subhanAllah, this hadith is amazing, because the wording that the Prophet ﷺ, he used, he said that those who are looking for the halawa of iman, the sweetness of faith, the sweetness, talking about the ingredients here. We're cooking up the ingredients for our prayers. We want to find the sweetness, cooking something sweet, inshallah. This sweetness, he mentioned, you're going to have to have three things. People who have three things, they will find this sweetness. And the first thing that he mentioned out of these three, that they love Allah and His Messenger more than anything else. They love Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, more than anything else. When this is who you are, you're going to see the difference in your actions. You love everything, Allah, and everything you do is because of the love of Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When it comes to loving anybody in this dunya, you basically love him for different reasons. Maybe it's because of his beauty or how they are. Now the ones who fall in love with the Hollywood actors and actresses and all of these singers. And by the way, being on the screen, it makes somebody, they fall in love with them. Like, oh, she's amazing. But in reality, she might not be when you see her in true life, because the screen makes them amazing. But anyways, people fall in love today with these people, different singers. You know, they find the women like, oh, he's so cute. Actually, he's not, but just because he's a singer. But they fall in love with him because of the beauty of them. And you'll find, for example, other people that fall in love with people, and they love people because of the good way they treat them, or that the blessings that they blessed upon them, things that they have done for them. And all of these things, when you look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the one who is complete in all of these forms. And His beauty of who He is subhanahu wa ta'ala, being the only complete, being the only one not in need of anybody else. Look at the beauty of His creation, just to know the beauty of the Creator. Look at the beauty as you look around the earth of His creation subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look into the sky. Look at the moon. Look at the stars. All this beauty. Look at the mountains, the trees, the forest, the sea. You see the beauty of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you know the beauty of the Creator subhanahu wa ta'ala. Verily Allah is the all beautiful subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Jameel. And when you look at the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the blessings that He's blessed us with, this also increases us in our attachment to Allah and our love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at the blessings that are around you. Look at the blessings that are around you every night and every day that you don't focus on. The blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with, being able to hear, being able to see. These things, we don't focus on them. But when you focus on the beauty of this, it will increase you in your love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I remember a story that Sheikh Muhammad Hassan, may Allah protect him, he mentioned about visiting a brother in an institute for the mentally ill, where they treat the people who have different illnesses, the mentally insane. And he said there was a woman who came in, and she looked like a normal lady, beautiful lady, and you see, you would think nothing wrong with her. What does she start to do? She starts to dance in front of a sheikh. She's dancing. And then she starts to undress, a'udhu billah. Obviously the sheikh looks down, doesn't want to see this. And she comes up and takes the qutr off the sheikh's head. And she's dancing. And the guards come in and take her away after this. But hey, through this thing, a'udhu billah, when nobody's expecting this, because he went to visit one of the doctors there who he knows. What happened during this is that they explained to the sheikh that, subhanallah, even though she looks normal, she has no idea what she's doing. She is mentally insane. No brain whatsoever. Doesn't know what she's doing. Sheikh said, subhanallah, he said, when I heard this, when this happened, he said, ask myself, have you ever thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessing of being sane? You might thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for other blessings, but for the blessings of just being somebody who's sane and has a brain, can think. Did you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Being able to see. Look at all the blessings around you. And if you know all these blessings, it will increase you of the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and our actions are directed in this life because of the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wallahi, you're going to find so much pleasure in your prayer. Every movement you do, when you go into that ruku' and you think your heart is filled with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you stand up and you go into the sunnah and you prostrate, you put your head on the ground out of love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, humility in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're going to see the difference in your prayers, inshallah ta'ala. These ingredients were missing, and we're reflecting on these ingredients, even though we haven't even entered the prayer. It's going to go deep into the prayer as well. But these things, they have so much meaning behind them, and have so much an effect on our lives as Muslims, and have so much effect on our prayer itself. We're missing them. We're missing these ingredients. And we're going to end with focusing on the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I gave a lecture before, perhaps you can go back to it, the ways to fill your heart with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ways to make Allah love you and for you to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to focus on these things and increasing our hearts with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in this is going to be a great ingredient in finding pleasure in our prayer. Until our next episode, we're out of time now. Until next episode, Allah knows best. Allahu alam. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad.